So distractions are an everyday part of life. With everything that's going on, literally they're saying right now that attention is the new currency. Like you're probably been bombarded by like a million different advertisements, a million different things, even as you drive down the road, social media, videos, news, all these kind of things are popping up and vying for our attention. The truth is that everybody is having to fight through this. And it's never been a time like this where we've had so much like our attention being pulled in a million different directions. And so the truth is we need to have a different strategy. And that is what we are going to share with you here today. So my amazing wife, Teresa, can't make it today. She's not feeling well. So I'm going to step in. But what we did is we broke down 10 things that we do on a consistent basis, not only to like get out of distraction in the moment, but also to set ourselves up for success in the future so that we are no longer distracted because we don't have the opportunity for those things to pop up. So we broke these down into 10 different things, but 2 different sections. The first section we're going to talk about first is really what we need to do when we're getting distracted in the moment. This is like, it's happened. There's no like purpose to beat ourselves up with it, but we have to learn from it, right? So we want to give you strategies for that. And then also 5 ways that you can actually set yourself up so you can prevent that from even happening. What would it be like if distractions were like impossible to happen to you? What if you set yourself up so that you wouldn't get off track? Now, this might bring up something else entirely different. Some people call it buffering, where in reality, you're like, well, I don't know now that I do have this time and I don't have these distractions, like it makes me a little nervous to take that next step. And we'll address that in another video. But for today, I really want to tackle distractions. So guys, welcome to Modern Leadership, where we see things differently. We help entrepreneurs like you who are extremely busy not only excel in their business, but also excel personally without having to burn themselves out or sacrifice family time, because there's always a way. How we do that is Mondays and Thursdays, shorter episodes, shorter videos. And then weekends, every Saturday at 9 a.m. Pacific, we have longer workshops where we can take a deeper dive into some of the things that I teach, even in some of my programs here on our YouTube channel. So if you're new, consider subscribing. Now, if you're popping in here new, first off, I see all of our incredible coaches who are here, a part of this live right now. If you're here, say hello. Let us know that you're here. But also, if you're watching this in the replay, I definitely appreciate you as well. If you're here live, in order for you to actually be able to comment in the live section, you need to be subscribed to the channel. That way we make sure that there's no weird bots that are coming in here and posting stuff. So guys, welcome to the call. So pumped up. And Amber is here on time. Amber, I love that. I love it. Love it. And Trisha and Carmen, by the way, if you guys have not heard her podcast, it's incredible. Authentically ADHD. It's a powerful podcast. And of course, my wife, Teresa, is laying on the couch watching this. So guys, let's jump right into this. All right. This is going to be a little bit shorter of a workshop, but I really want you to like really take in what I'm about to give you guys. But also like, I want you to think about this in terms of there's one piece that's going to speak loudest to me. I'm going to share 10 different ways, 10 different methods, 10 different things that could come up, 10 different ways of like reframing it. But I want you to always like focus on the one thing that speaks loudest to you. Do you ever have those trainings where you learn a lot of things, but like one thing is like, I absolutely need to do that. Like that is literally my next step. That's what I want you to be looking for as you're listening to this. All right. Not doing all of these things at once, but picking the one that like speaks loudest to you and leaning into that. All right. So let's start off with tip number 1. And I need to pause just for 1 second. And scene. Okay, so I should probably have the paperwork with me before I actually start. I had the old one. Okay, tip number 1 is time blocking. And I'm going to write it over here. This is tip number 1 related to what you can do before things happen. All right, so number 1 is time blocking. Now, this is something that Teresa like really leans into because it has a lot to do with like the intentionality of setting what you're going to be doing at that specific moment. So before things happen, before things can distract you, you can use your prefrontal cortex in the beginning to set the intention of what you're going to be doing in that specific moment, and then trying to eliminate any other distractions that could potentially be, right? Now, with time blocking, what I do want to say, let me try this again. Can you guys see me? Can everybody see me? Am I here? Let me see a yes. Okay. Let me know if you guys can see me. Teresa says that I'm not on camera. Can you see me? Anybody? Going once? When it comes to time blocking, I'm just gonna lean in, see if you guys can actually see me. When it comes to, okay, Amber, thank you. When it comes to time blocking, it's about deciding now what you're going to be doing in the future. That way, it's kind of like, just like when you're meal prepping. When you're meal prepping in the specific moment, you are thinking about the things that you're going to be eating tomorrow or the day after or the day after. So if you're thinking about it now, you're able to more logically think about what you're going to be doing then. So that way, when the time comes up, all you have to do is just stay the path. So that's why number one is, if you're struggling when it comes to distractions, are you creating and using time blocking? Are you saying, this is the day and time that I'm going to be doing this with my business. This is the day and time that I'm going to be doing this with my family. This is when I'm going to play Ark with my son, Andrew. This is when I'm going to like go into animes and do all the stuff my daughter wants to do. This is when I'm going on a walk with Teresa. This is when I'm not doing anything and I'm just chilling by myself. Are you being intentional with blocking that time in advance? So when you come at it in terms of like beforehand, and you can like actually figure out what you're going to be doing into the future, you can lean into that rather than doing what most people do, which is just trying to wing it. They have like 15 different things they're going to do. And instead of like directing it to a specific time on your schedule, you say, I'm just going to get all these 15 things done in this hour. And because you're doing that, you're all over the place and you're just taking on things as they come up, and you're putting out a lot of different fires first. And then you realize that you run out of time. So if you're struggling with that, really look into time blocking. All right. Number 2 is setting up your environment for success. I can spell environment. I promise you I can. But let me give you an example. So if I have this pre-workout or I have some water and it's visible to me, it's one of the ways that we can hack into our habits. If something is visible to us, it will remind us of doing that thing. The opposite is true too. So if you're in a place, like let's say, for example, you're a mom and you have a lot of stuff that you're doing, right? You're trying to keep the kids happy. You're trying to like cook. You're trying to do the laundry, any of that kind of stuff. By the way, that could be guys too. It doesn't matter if it's a guy or girl. But let's say that in the background, you now have visible clothes, or you're in a place where you can see the dishes piling up, and it's your responsibility to do that. That could very well distract you from what you actually need to be doing. So what can you do to set yourself up for success? I mean, you could do those things beforehand. You could move your desk to an entirely different place where all you're doing is facing a wall and you don't have anything that could potentially distract you. Now, what I realized is when I discovered ADHD and OCD was in my family, being able to eliminate this stuff not only helps me, but also helps my kids as well. Because we're not thinking about the 47 million things that we can do, because our brain is really smart. It will convince us that we have a million things to do other than the uncomfortable thing that we're about to do, right? I'm about to go live on video here and I'm a little bit behind. I don't even have my notes with me, right? And then Teresa comes up and says, hey, the video's off. But here's the thing, with all of those things kind of going on, it could very well easily be a distraction. And how we can set ourselves up for success is making sure that we set up our environment for success. And when things don't go well, we just lean into it and go, well, this is the way it was supposed to happen. And now I'm going to take this and I'm going to run with it, because this is what success really looks like, right? So number 2 is setting up your environment for success. Yes, you want to make things visible so that you can remind yourself of them, but also there's times when you need to remove it because you know that you're prone to actually going down that path. So ask yourself, if this is the one that you are going to be focusing on this week, what can I do to set myself up for better success? And you know it, because when you put yourself in that environment, your brain always goes to this thing, right? It's like, well, I can get off track if I think about this, or I think about that, or I think about this. Set yourself up for success by not making that visible to you, okay? Number 3. This is a really good one. I didn't even think about this one. Number 3 is take breaks, okay? Take breaks. What we mean by take breaks, let me pop it up here. Look at that. We got a cool little thing. What Teresa was talking about when it comes to taking breaks is that sometimes we will kind of look for distractions because we're kind of getting bored. We're doing the same thing over and over and over, and we're not leaning in. We're not plugging into it. We're not we've done it for so long, maybe for an hour, 2 hours, or 3 hours, that even just taking a break and resetting our brain would be incredibly important. When you're in that moment, your brain is going to look for different distractions, right? One of the things that we were very aware of is when somebody who was helping my son out was talking about, well, you do have some things where we can really get you to focus on, but it's always the things that he's most excited about. He has zero problems focusing on video games. he's like all in, he's there because our attention is kind of like directed towards something new, something exciting, something that's going to protect me, something that's going to keep me alive, something that's going to keep my attention, right? And so we're going to be like putting our attention wherever it is that in that specific moment is pulling us towards that. And if we're getting bored, if we feel like we're doing the same thing over and over and over again, just taking a break will help you reset those distraction muscles that are trying to like take over and take you down a certain path. So getting up, taking a break. For me, when I was working full-time while working in my business, my break would be every 50 minutes I would get up and I would walk up and down the stairs in our police station, and then I would come back and I'd sit back down. And I can't tell you how much more focused I was able to be on my specific case or what I was working on, rather than just doing 3, 4, 5 hours in a row, because I really did need a break. So number 3 is to take breaks. Number 4, set some short-term goals. Now, you hear a lot about setting long-term goals, and I love them, but a lot of people don't set short-term goals for some reason. And I think there's a really great synergy in both of them. Whenever I have a one-on-one conversation with somebody and I'm talking about like what they want to create at the end of the year, I don't just leave them at that. I also reverse engineer it into shorter goals, whether it's quarters, whether it's months, whether it's weeks. Because when you have that short-term goal, it creates this thing called urgency. And when you have that urgency, it will get you to not be distracted because you're in your mind, you're focused on what is like closer to your potential of creating right now, rather than 5 years from now. 5 years is a great way to like paint a vision out there in the future, but it's not necessarily going to keep getting you take action every single day this week. In reality, what it could do is maybe in the first couple of days you do, but then you very easily can be distracted because it's so far out in the future. But if you move it up a little bit closer, not the goal, but you actually figure out, reverse engineer it to what that would look like over the next quarter or over the next month, you're going to get yourself to be more focused and less distracted. It'll make sure that you focus your attention in the right area so that when things do come up, you're like, no, I've got to get to this because this is something that is a short-term goal that I have, not something that I can put off. I'm sure a lot of you guys have that where you have like quotas for a month, for example. Like you work for a company and they say you have to, sell a certain amount in 30 days. And in the beginning, because you don't have that focus of like, what do I need to do every week? What does that translate into doing every single day? Instead of thinking about like 3 or 4 sales a week, for example, you think about like 10 or 15 sales a month. You're able to push it off a little bit later. And you're basically, your brain is going to be able to fill it all with different distractions because you don't have that specific goal that you're heading towards, right? But if you can break it down into shorter goals or smaller short-term goals, it'll get you to stay less focused or stay more focused and to be less distracted, all right? So that's number 4 is set short-term goals. And number 5, this is like one of my favorite ones, and that is signing a contract to stick with something for a year. Hear me out on this one, okay? Hear me out on this one. Like the contract that we have with ourselves, when we have a contract that says, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it for a year, and you do it from the energy of your heart right now, that means a month, 2 months, 3 months down the line, when you have this piece of paper that says, I'm going to do this and I'm not going to be distracted. I'm going to put my head down and I'm going to go for this. And that's what I'm going to do for a year. And at the end of the year, I will actually take a second to go, is this something that I should continue to do or not? Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't like in the process, learn some of the things you can add to it, some of the things you can remove from it. But I'm saying if you're like, I'm doing a podcast, it doesn't mean you're doing a podcast for 3 weeks. For me, it's like, I'm doing a podcast for a year. I would sign a contract. I am doing a podcast for a year, sign my name to it, date it, and literally have it so that I can remind myself, this is the shiny object I'm chasing. Anything else that comes up in the interim is a no. Maybe it's, I'll see this later. No, thanks. Maybe I'll watch it a little bit like in the future. Maybe it's something I do. But for right now, this is the thing that I'm spending my time on. The reason why this is so important, guys, is because number 1 is if you're signing a contract, you're basically making that stance. And I would highly suggest you share it with somebody else because it's so much easier when it's so much easier to get yourself not to do it if you are the only person who knows about it. But when you sign it and you share it with somebody else, it gives you that power to stick to it. But it'll prevent outside things from getting you off track. Perfect example is this YouTube channel. So back in November of last year, I'm like, I'm doing YouTube for a year. Not I'm doing it for like a couple months to see if I get good traction. Not if like, hey, I don't know, like maybe this isn't the right thing. Maybe I should go back to doing X, Y, and Z. Maybe I should. No, it was like, I'm doing this for a year. That's it. It's set in stone. Now I'm going to grow, right? So I started off doing regular videos, and then I started to do like workshops on the weekends. And then we're going to start, Kurt's repurposing some of our podcast episodes to put them on our podcast or our YouTube channel, because some people just want to listen to the podcast and they don't want to see the audio of the actual, of the video in the background, right? And so we're trying like a million different things, but it doesn't mean that we're not going to lean into YouTube for an entire year. That's what we're doing. We're going all in with YouTube. And I have signed that contract, that verbal contract in my mind, but I've also told Kurt, I've also told Teresa, this is what we're doing for the next year. No matter what happens. It doesn't matter if I get 0 views on a video or 100 million views on a video. I'm doing it for an entire year. And then I'm still going to, in the interim, be making adjustments, trying different things, but I've set the direction. This is what my focus is going to be. So if somebody comes up to me and goes, Mark, dude, TikTok is the place, man. You should get on there. You should do your dance moves and stuff like that. Personally, they don't know me because they know I would not be good on dance. But when it comes to that, like, I'm like, I appreciate that, but that's not my thing right now. Like, YouTube is my thing that I'm leaning into, right? And this way, I do it for a year. Notice I didn't say 5 years. I said a year, because I'm actually going to look at it again and make a decision if I'm going to sign a contract for another year. Even if I decide, like, at the end of that, like, hey, YouTube isn't for me. By the way, I'm not going to. I've already decided, like, I'm going to continue this kind of like forever, because this is what I love. I love this medium. I love teaching, training, coaching, doing all this stuff on video. But even if I had decided at the end of a year that this wasn't for me, how much growth I experienced would have been game changing. It's the reason why I started out on Facebook. I moved over to Instagram. I spent a lot of time on a podcast, 7 years, right? I have learned all of these things, and now I get to bring them all here to you guys while still doing some of those other things in the background where I'm not having to do it. My boy Kurt is out there able to repurpose a lot of our stuff, but it's because I decided that I was going to sign a contract and do this for a year. How many times have you signed up for something, joined something, and it was that shiny object just until the next shiny object came up? What if instead you went all in with that and you put your blinders on and you're like, this is what I'm doing. This is what my intention is, right? I can totally see it even in our Push Coach certification school. So we have coaches who joined, signed, and became life coaches, and they sort of disconnected. And after 3 months, they're like, no, I'm cool. I'm just going to go off and create my own thing. Versus the people who are like, this is what I'm doing for a full year. And they join the PCCS and they become a master coach after that. And then they continue to surround, and they're like, no, this is my thing. I need to continue to grow, to continue to become better as a coach. It's not like 3 months and then I'm out of here, right? It's like leaning into it. And I can tell you, not only from my own personal experience, but for coaching a lot of people, that's where people see the most success, when they're like not going from thing to thing, they're going in a straight line. Josh said this to me, by the way. You guys all know who Josh is, but Josh Coates is one of my is most impactful mentor of my whole entire life. He says that the shortest distance between 2 points is a line. But what most people don't understand is when they're the one who's driving and they don't have a coach, they don't have a team, they don't have somebody to help support them, their line looks like this. And it's going all around the place, and they don't even realize that they're not going in a straight line. That's why we have to be very cognizant of this is the direction I'm going, and I'm giving it a year, and no other shiny objects are going to pop up and take my distraction. They are going to pop up, but they're not going to allow me to get distracted. All right. So that was number 5. I wanted to make sure you guys heard that one. That one's a little bit deeper. So Teresa says, this gives you an opportunity to get creative because you know you've got that time to make it work. 100%. I mean, that's such a huge thing in the background, right? So if you know that you have an entire year to make things work, you're not pressured into immediately getting results right now. You're like, I'm going to do whatever I can to make adjustments, to tweak it, to change it, to do less, to do more, figure things out, but I've got an entire year to do that, right? Yes, the shortest distance between 2 points are a straight line. Not getting off track, not being all over the place with things, even though they are going to pop up, they're going to try and get your attention. Remembering, if you signed a contract, that is your reminder that, no, I said to myself that I'm going to be doing this for this amount of time, all right? All right, so that was number 5. Number 6, these are things that you can do after things pop up from your distractions, all right? Those first 5 are really things that were focused around, how can I set myself up for success so that I can do this beforehand, before distractions come up. Once again, it was number 1 was time blocking. Number 2 was setting up your environment for success. One thing I didn't talk about in number 2 is setting up your environment for success is your outside environment, but it could also be your digital environment. Are you distracted by having 37 million thumbnails on your desktop? Are you distracted by having a tab open that has your email, and on your email it says 72 read emails? Do you have your social media tab open, and every time that something pops up, you're like, oh, hey, what's this? What's that? Are you getting distracted from that? Or do you have like some other work that you have up on your computer all the time, and when you see it, you're reminded, oh, I got to do this work? Those are distractions. Make sure you set your environment up for success. Even if you just have a totally different tab, you completely log off and log in as a second person on your computer so you don't have access to all those things. Whatever you can do to set yourself up for success. Number 3 is take breaks. Continue to take breaks. Know that if you don't take breaks, you will definitely be distracted because your brain wants to stay awake. It wants to stay vibrant. It wants to have those new crazy things that are kind of like happening. It wants to focus on something else other than what you're focusing it on, right? And when you have that, take those breaks. I promise you'll be more focused. And number 4 is set short-term goals. So set short-term goals. So yes, long-term goals is great, but setting short ones will get you into urgency and creating that action today, okay? And then signing a contract to stick with yourself, with something for a year. Now, I said a year arbitrary. You can make it be 6 months. You can make it be whatever. I wouldn't suggest that you set it for like 5 years. I would like suggest that you have some kind of contract where you're like, whether it's 6 months or a year, and then you rethink about where you're at that point. Of course, measure where you're at right now compared to where you are over that time, because it definitely will increase as you continue to be consistent. But also, I don't want you forcing something for like 7 years like I did when it comes to like social media, when it comes to Instagram and Facebook. Definitely not my jam. I don't love it over there. And I was forcing it for multiple years, just thinking, oh, I've got to do this longer. And after 7 years, I was like, okay, maybe not. And then I did the podcast and that started to take off. And then I started to do YouTube and that started to take off because I actually enjoy it. And it's a better medium based off of my skills. So that's why number 5 is signing a contract, picking that day, and just putting your name to the contract, okay? Number 6 is weekly reflection. Weekly reflection. Here's what I mean. After things distract you, they're trying to teach you something. What are they trying to teach you? So if your kids interrupt, if you have this over here happening, if you have your phone's binging and beeping, if you have your emails are popping up and every single time a notification comes up, boop, you got mail. I don't know if anybody has that anymore, but like, you get what I mean. It's all about weekly reflections. So in that moment when you got distracted, what is it trying to teach you? What is the lesson that you need to learn so that doesn't distract you anymore? So what are distractions trying to teach you? You start asking yourself that question every day, you're going to come up with some really great answers. Well, I guess I should put my phone on Do Not Disturb. Well, I guess I should like uninstall that app. Well, I guess I should close down that thing, right? Well, I guess I should put a note on my door saying that I'm working between this time and this time to this time is the playtime for you guys. Like, oh, I guess this is trying to teach me that I need to get a nanny to come over and watch the kids while I'm doing this because they're not allowing me to do my YouTube live and they keep knocking on the door. Like, what is it trying to teach you? When you have that reflection question, it will give you this place of like, oh, okay, this is just something it's trying to teach me versus getting angry or frustrated or upset that it happened or shaming or guilting or humiliating yourself into doing something else, all right? Instead, lean into it. Go, what is this trying to teach me, all right? Number 7 is, we already talked about it, using Do Not Disturb on your phone. So I should have done this before the call. Nobody's called me yet, but I have the function of Do Not Disturb on my phone, and I put it on anytime that I'm doing something that I absolutely do not want to be disturbed for. Now, that being said, what's great about the Do Not Disturb function of your phone is if you have an Apple phone, when somebody else who has an Apple phone goes to message you, it shows the Do Not Disturb button. They can still send you a message, but it's basically like, hey, I'm not going to get back to you really, really soon. If you're somebody who struggles with distractions, eliminating those as much as possible is critical. And doing that, especially when it comes to like our technology is the thing that is trying to distract us the most, right? As business owners, literally we're distractions. I mean, you're watching this video, so I'm distracting you from other things because there's important things that I want to share with you, right? It's the same as when you're on there scrolling social media. It's not that there's anything wrong. It's just you need to take control over it. And so when I'm like, you know what, I can't get distracted here. When I was writing this book, I was in the coffee shop writing the book. I had to make sure that I could not be distracted because a distraction could have taken me off of whatever my point was that I was writing on. And so when I set myself up for success by actually programming in the Do Not Disturb, it's a game changer. Now, if you have an Apple phone, I know that you can also do this with Androids as well. I just don't know how to do it. But with Apple, you can actually go in and you can actually beforehand type it in. Okay, between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m., do not disturb for business activities. Between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., do not disturb for family activities. And then you have time when you're going to be open. You make the decision on what you're going to do, but you can literally program it beforehand so that you don't get distracted. The worst thing that happens, and I got to tell you this because it's what happens for me when I have anxiety, which is something that I have pretty frequently, is when I hear the beep or I hear the bzzz, and then I have to train myself not to get it. Do you know how many extra thoughts I have about, well, who is that? Could it be like something big that's happened? I mean, could it actually be that somebody's hurt? Like, what happens if I don't get this? And there's so much additional thinking, especially if you suffer from like anxiety sometimes, that if you had just put it on Do Not Disturb, you wouldn't even know it happened. And then later you can go back and you can look at it, right? And so that's what I make sure I do is I put my phone on, especially during the times when I know absolutely I don't want any interruptions. I put it on Do Not Disturb so I don't have to think through the million different things that it could be when I do hear a beep or a bing or a ding, all right? So using Do Not Disturb. Amber says, but the problem is that I forget to turn it off and then I miss important calls. Schedule it. So if you go into your phone, you can say between this time and this time. So like, let's say right now you're like, okay, it's 9:30 and I want to do time between 9:30 and 11. You go in there, you click on the button that says schedule, you say 9:30 to 11 for the business one, and then it'll turn off automatically at 11. So it does it for you, so you don't even have to worry about it. It turns it on and turns it off. This also has the function with sleeping too. There's a sleep schedule that you can put into your phone. For me, if my sleep schedule is like between 6 p.m. and 2 a.m., that means if anybody between 6 p.m. and 2 a.m. messages me, I'm not going to hear it. And I don't want to hear it, but also like it protects that time for me. It's a great way of setting up boundaries without you having to actually power through them with your mind. Some people struggle with setting boundaries. We're going to talk about that in a minute. And if you struggle with setting boundaries, find a way of you setting the boundaries and taking action now that you don't have to think about it later. And this is a great way of doing that. All right. All right. So that is number 7. We're going to jump into number 8. I want you to ask yourself, what could come up and distract me? And what and how can I plan for this right now? One of the questions I ask my one-on-one clients is, okay, we have all these goals. We have these things that you're going to crush. Like you're learning these new skills, you're developing these things, you're getting your business to this level that you want to get to. You're also creating this relationship with your family that's going to be incredible because you're going to have the success personally, but you're also going to have the success in your business. But I want to ask you this. What are some things, if we go all the way to the end of the year, what are some things that you know are going to pop up that could have gotten you off track? And how can we plan for them right now? We all have certain distractions in our lives that we know are going to happen. And if we know they're going to happen, that means they've happened before, we can plan for them right now. So if somebody's sick from school, right, and we don't have a plan, we just have to wing it, right? And that's going to happen. There's going to be emergencies. There's going to be things that come up. But when you think about this, and Sunday night, your kid starts to not feel well, what can you plan for right now so that if tomorrow he is sick, that you actually have a plan because you're not going to get off track. You're already going to have something in place. And you're going to be like, here's the things that I'm going to be able to do. Whether it's you completely disconnect from work and make this just like a family day, whether you now use this as your greatest inspiration because now you're going to be able to take pictures of you working while you're also taking care of your kid because you're doing the mom life or the dad life. You're like showing people what's possible and that they don't have to be run by, everything that happens on the outside, right? The facts don't dictate it. And so this now gives you a really great opportunity to actually talk about it because there's a lot of people are having those kind of distractions, right? So number 8 is ask yourself, what could come up and how can I actually plan for that right now? This is a really great way because a lot of times we forget some of the distractions that have come up in the past. But when we can ask ourselves this question, we can actually put ourselves back into that situation and go, oh, if I had done this, this, and this, it would have been better. Not perfect, but it would have been better. And if we can come from that place right now, we can learn so much from that question. Number 9, we're getting to the end, is having someone to hold you accountable who won't let you off the hook. Teresa and I did this awesome video around like the 10 people you surround yourself with the most and when those should be your support, your spouse and your friends, and when they should not be. Because a lot of times we think we're hanging out with the right people and we're not. We're hanging out with the wrong people, the people who are not going to hold us to the fire, the people who are, going to say it's okay to just, take a pass this time. And is there times for that? There might be. But trust me when I say that most of us have people like that in our lives where they just say, oh, it's okay. It's fine. Just continue doing what you're currently doing. Like it's not a big deal, right? And they minimize it. And we want to hold ourselves to a higher standard, right? So being able to connect with somebody who's going to hold you accountable, get you to show up, and they won't let you off the hook will help you when it comes to distractions. Because if you tell this person 3 or 4 times, hey, I keep getting distracted by X, Y, and Z, they're going to help you not only to fuel you to find a story to actually change that, but also help you like discover different ways of doing it so that you can like lean in and not be so distracted. Sometimes just putting it out there, just having that accountability, just having like even the potential of like, that you're going to be on a call with your one-on-one coach next week. Sometimes that can even prevent you from being distracted, and putting yourself in that environment is really what you needed to actually get yourself to be focused on it, because now you're like, I've got to take action. I've got to do these things, right? So number 9 is having someone to hold you accountable who won't let you off the hook. I know Trisha. Trisha says, people really do matter. I really love my accountability pod. 100%, Trisha, 100%. Number 10, setting boundaries and sticking to them. I said a few minutes ago, like, what is this thing trying to teach you, right? What is this thing, that distraction, this thing that keeps coming up? What is it actually trying to teach you? A great way to overcome that is to set boundaries. Now, what boundaries typically are is when something or someone like infringes on your boundaries, you come in, you determine where the actual boundaries are. This is what I consider to be okay. This is when it's okay to text me. This is when it's not okay to text me about business, right? This is when it's okay to do this. This is when it's okay not to do this. And when you set up those boundaries, a lot of times, we can set up boundaries beforehand, but a lot of times what I found is like boundaries tend to come afterwards, right? After somebody infringes on it, you're like, man, I got to make sure I set up some boundaries around here because I don't want that to continue to happen. And then hopefully we take that lesson and we move it into the future and we tell everybody about it. So that way we have those boundaries. But the most important thing is like when something is distracting you, number 1 is the first part of setting boundaries, but number 2 is sticking to them. Sticking to them. It's the hard part, guys. But did you know that we actually teach people how to like respond to us? We teach people how to reply to us. We basically teach it to them because we basically let them know what our standards are. Is it okay to talk to me like this? Is it okay for you to do this? Is it okay for you to use this time frame? Is it okay for you to distract me at any specific time? And if we allow it, we're basically telling them it's okay and it's not their fault. It's ours because we didn't set up a boundary. So if you're thinking like, man, I don't know what it is, I just keep being distracted by this thing, what kind of boundary can you put in place and how can you make sure that you stick to it? Went through a whole bunch of different ways of doing that today, but really making sure that you understand that every time we get an opportunity to set up a boundary is an opportunity to not only guide people in the right direction, but we teach them how to treat us. And when we do that, not only does it help us, but it also helps them, especially when they start to do some of the things and emulate some of the things that we do. So if I'm a coach and I'm allowing people to call me at all wakes of hours of the night, to message me at 2:00 in the morning and have a conversation with me, I'm literally telling them that when they become a coach, they can do that too. And for me, I'm like, that is not the type of leader that I want to be. Number 1, I don't want it to impact me, but also I don't want them to know that this is a good way of treating themselves when they get to that point too. So setting boundaries and sticking to them is vital. And we're going to go into one bonus tip here. Okay, guys? The bonus tip is getting coached. Now, I talked about 10 different ways here, right? I want you to really like think about which one to you is like the loudest to you. Which one is like, this is the one that I absolutely need to focus on. This is what I need to think about this entire week and put all of your time and attention into it. I would reflect on it every single day to remind yourself of, okay, did I stick to this? Am I like focusing on like when I have the opportunity to grow this muscle or am I not? But this last part is called getting coached. And the reason why I saved this to last is because all of these 10 things are different stories, are different thoughts, or different tactics that you could use to really help you. But when you get coached by somebody who understands these things, they can personalize it for your specific situation. I found that a lot of people struggle with that. Like they're struggling with like how they, whether it's distraction, whether it's creating a podcast like I did last weekend with Teresa, whether it's like all of these different things, they're struggling with how to take the universal principles and pulling it into their life. If you're somebody who struggles with that, you need to find a coach. Whether that's me, whether that's somebody else on my team, whether it's somebody else on the planet, it doesn't matter. But getting that personalized coaching will help you to pull out what is going to be the best strategy for you, okay? So that's what I got for you guys. Now, I do have one final thing, and that is like if you get to the end of this video and you're thinking, you know what, like, just the world is just becoming noisier and noisier and more crowded and more crowded. Like, how am I able to not only focus my time and attention on business, but also make my business, make my relationships even stronger? Because here's the thing, with all the distractions, we've talked a lot about like business today, but I also want you to know these equally apply to your relationship with your kids, relationship with in your marriage, relationships to multiple different people. There was a workshop that Teresa and I did, and I'll leave it for you guys up here on the screen, where we talked and we did a real deep dive into like how you can actually make your business make you feel even more connected to your family. And when you do that, it's just an incredible feeling. Know that you're excelling both personally and professionally. I'll leave you that link also in the show notes. I really appreciate you guys for being here. And I do want to hear from you. Which one of these 10 or 11 are you going to lean into this week? Which is the one that spoke loudest to you? Type it in the comments. I really appreciate you guys so much. I would typically stay a little bit longer to answer some Q&A, but we have to go to soccer for my daughter today. But I want to say just how much I appreciate you guys for leading from the front, for doing the uncomfortable things, for being here, and for being willing to attack these distractions because you're out there to make a significant impact in the world. I know that you wouldn't be here, you wouldn't be watching this, you wouldn't be leaning in if you truly didn't want to make a huge impact in the world, and the world needs you now more than ever, all right? So thank you for what you do out there every single day, and we'll see you guys next weekend, all right? All right, bye everybody.